I will be presenting on Alexander Borodin String Quartet No. 2, the first movement, Allegro Moderato. Alexander Borodin was a Russian composer as well as a renowned chemist. He was one of the 5 members of the Mighty Five, who were a group of Russian musicians that promoted their music as a national style of Russian classical and folk music. The 5 employed certain musical strategies such as tonal mutability and heterophony, which can be heard in this string quartet. However, Borodin slightly differed from his cohorts because of his greater receptivity to Western European styles, which is very prominent in his simple and clear-cut sonata form of the string quartet first movement. This movement's principal key is in D major, however, it shifts tonalities throughout, which I will mention as I show my analysis further on. This movement is in a very simple and straightforward sonata form. Exposition spans from measure 1 to measure 107, and the key goes from D major, A major, hovers around F sharp minor, and moves towards the home key of D major again at the end. This can be an example of the musical strategy, tonal mutability, which I mentioned earlier, which is a distinctive aspect of Russian folk music. It's defined by a tune naturally shifting between tonal centers. A distinct key is established in the beginning, which then transports to a different key eventually. Within the exposition, 2 main themes are introduced, where theme 2 possesses its own form. Transition occurs from measures 35 to 43 in the key of D major, which shifts to A major immediately after entering theme 2. Development happens from measure 108 to 179, which is in F major. From measures 180 to 265 is where the recap is, with the coda at measures 266 to 304. Before I dive into the analysis, I will be playing a recording of the exposition of this movement so we could get a sense of what we are looking at. The exposition is marked by the entrance of the cello with its beautiful tune, which can be defined as theme 1 in D major. This theme is then immediately taken up by the first violin. This rhapsodic and natural flow of the opening of the sonata form has had people characterize it as Russian Schubert. The interaction of these two parts can be seen as Borodin being represented as the cello, as he was a cellist, and his wife represented as the first violin. It is important to note Borodin's intention of portraying him and his wife's deepening love, as the first violin and cello parts intertwine quite frequently throughout the movement. The long expansion of theme 1 is then followed by the transition, which spans 9 measures. During this, the key shifts from D major to A major to prepare for the upcoming theme 2. Theme 2 is marked by the first violin playing in the new modulated key of A major. This theme has a very Slavonic/Russian sound to it more than the first theme. The subordinate theme is interesting in a way where it follows its own form of ABA prime within the exposition. So the first part of this theme 2 can be considered as A. Not long after, theme 2 of B is introduced in both the first violin and the cello part in measure 57 with a pickup. As this B gets expanded, the key hovers around F sharp minor, but starts moving towards D major at around measure 73. This movement then leads into the A prime of the theme at measure 77, where it is back in D major. For A prime, the cello brings back the same material as part A in D major, but plays it on an octave lower than what the first violin played previously. It's also further expanded than A, making it A prime. One more thing to point out here is that at measure 77 to 82, Borodin utilizes one of the musical strategies I mentioned in the beginning, heterophony, which is employed between the first violin and the cello with their distinct melodic lines. Closing material, which is shown as animato here, begins on measure 86 onto measure 107. Starting at a climatic point, the animato section gradually descends on register and emphasizes the closing material with a poco a poco ritardando. Development is marked by the key change to F major. It is a total of 71 measures from 108 to 179. Similarly to the exposition, the cello begins on the first theme, however, it's played 2 octaves lower and in a different key from D major. Here, Borodin also implements contrapuntal techniques in all 4 voices, marked in the red highlighters. Although still in F major, the cello begins to hold an A pedal point, which can signify the dominant of D major. This movement is a resolution to the D major principal key. By the time we reach measure 180, the key is back in D major and marks the start of the recap. We can see in the highlighted parts that the same themes make their reappearance. The recap section generally has the same structure as the exposition, with theme 1 played by the first and cello, theme 2 retaining its ABA prime form. The key difference here compared to the exposition is marked with the red arrow, where the viola plays a theme in a different key of E flat major. This movement ends with a coda, which is an extended version of the first animato. Starting at tranquillo in measure 286, it slowly concludes the movement in the home key D major, very obviously as all 4 voices hold a D for the last 2 measures. That was all for the analysis for the first movement of Borodin String Quartet No. 2. I hope this video format of my final project came out well, and thank you to whoever watched till the end.